In the final season of Game of Thrones, fan favourite Brienne of Tarth became a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, consummated her love for the Kingslayer, and survived the Battle of Winterfell. It was a pretty good season for her, I'd say. I'm Rob Lucurius, senior editor of Gold Derby, and I am here with Gwendoline Christie, who played the stoic and badass Brienne. Gwendoline, first things first, what did you think of where we left off with Brienne in the series finale?
I loved it, I have to say. I was so happy that she became commander of the Kingsguard, because when we first saw Brienne in season 2, she was besting Sir Loras, Knight of the Flowers, to become a part of Renly's Kingsguard. And it was great to see in her final moments that she achieves her dream. And one of the few characters on Game of Thrones that does achieve their dreams. So I was very pleased about that. I was also pleased that her very last line was, I think ships take preference over brothels.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
It's so Brienne, isn't it? Like, that's her.
It's practicality,
Yeah.
you know, and it's a woman with a innately feminist outlook. And through that, it's about equality, you know, and accepting people as they are. I think that's what I really loved about playing the character, is that this incredibly unconventional character who nobody likes. She's mocked. She's very much outside of that society. She's a misfit, but she creates her own path, and through her own self-belief, she creates her own life, you know, and her own identity, and it's uncompromising. And also she has a truly altruistic outlook, and she dedicates herself to a life of service, in service of an idea larger than herself. But what she does do is that we see her evolve over the last couple of seasons, and we see particularly in the final season her get in touch with her own wants, needs and desires, and we see her vulnerability, and we see her take risks, and it be about her as a woman, as opposed to her as a machine.
Yeah, you have hit the nail on the head, because there's something about her, even in the books, people are just adore her, and then the way that you have played her, fans are just so in love with this character, because she is so selfless, and she is always striving for that recognition and equality. And then by season 8, she's kind of arrived, and we start to see things pay off for her. And that is it's just such a wonder to watch, isn't it?
Well, I love that. When I got the scripts, I was very excited, because I felt that we got to see into her interior life. And so we get a chance to explore, you know, so many seasons. I've loved playing her because she's so strong, you know, she's so morally strong. She's always about taking the higher ground. She's about pushing through the pain barrier. She's about being stoic and achieving the strength that maybe others don't have, can't find, and trying to give that strength to them. And then being allowed to shine a light around inside that world, that personal world, and look at what she wants. And also, you know, in the books, it said how Brienne doesn't smile. And so I really took that on board. And I was thinking with each season, it was always in my mind, when will she smile? When would it be appropriate for her to smile? And I didn't want to throw it away, and I didn't want to waste it. And then when I read the scripts, I saw, and I don't think it was in the scripts, I don't think so, but when she's knighted, it felt to me that's the time that we see Brienne smile, because that's about achieving her dreams on her own terms, that she is made a sir, that she achieves the impossible, that she steps outside of gender boundaries. And it's just about the choices she's made and how she's chosen to live her life. And, you know, it was operating on different levels for me as well. I'm afraid to say, is that, you know, to be employed for 8 years is an incredible thing for an actor, an incredible thing for me. And being in that scene, and the unbelievable love I have for the character, the way in which the character has done so much for me personally. You know, it's an amazing thing for me in terms of being allowed to have a career. but in terms of my confidence and my belief in my ability to, as an actor, it's been transformative. And I'm standing there with people who have helped to teach me to act, that have supported me, the crew who I loved, my cast members who I loved. And, you know, in terms of what it means in society, the way in which Game of Thrones has been such a phenomenon, such a global phenomenon, and it's united people, you know, across political opinion, it's united people. And what that character represents in terms of women outside of the patriarchy, all of that coming together, what it meant for me as an actor, what it means for the character, what it meant for an idea of what it meant for women in that moment, it hit me very strongly. And you know, it all came out in that smile. You know, it wasn't planned really. I was sort of I thought that this would be the point, but I didn't plan for it to be the kind of theme that I saw when I watched the TV show.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of love that I received from people in that room and outside of that room that really struck me. And for the character feel that kind of support and magical radiance in that moment. It was a very it was a very special moment for me, which I won't forget.
Yeah, and I think it's very important that people have to remember that Brienne didn't really smile. Like, her stoicism was so overt, and then she finally received such an honor by this man that she really loves. And we were able to reflect on her journey over the years by just looking at your face. So much emotion that kind of crossed over your face. It's just the way you were able to achieve that was quite remarkable. And when I watched that episode for the first time, just because unfortunately this is the way I think, sometimes I can't help myself. I wonder, what would it have been like when you first read that script? And you've already explained how you decided to take it in that direction with a smile, but I mean, did it hit you that this thing's coming to an end and she's finally getting somewhere in her life?
Yeah, it was the final season was all about endings. Each scene felt like it was about an ending, you know, and I was preparing myself that the character might not, you know, the character could die off screen in the first episode. I didn't know what it was going to be. I couldn't believe that she was allowed so much resolution throughout the series, and that particular scene, for her to actually achieve something that she desired personally, meant a great deal to me. I think everybody was very conscious when we were filming Game of Thrones that, you know, the days were counting down. We were all delighted to come back together again for one last time. But, you know, you play a scene like that and it feels like, wow, there's 7 seasons coming to a conclusion here. The 7 seasons of this character's hard work and striving and working happily, thanklessly, and then to achieve that kind of honor, also to be made a Sir. It isn't some adaptation for a woman. She is recognized for being a knight, for being chivalrous. I remember actually when I first got the part, going and buying, I found it was a sort of kids handbook on being a knight and what that meant. And this sort of child's book, and it was very useful to break it down to most simplest terms about what it meant and what being a knight of the realm means, you know. So it was it's an extraordinary thing. I just loved that. I felt that it was crossing gender barriers, actually. Yeah. That's what I loved.
Yeah, it's so special. And speaking of special, I remember when I watched the documentary about the show, it was utterly heartbreaking to watch you comfort Conleth Hill as he read through Varys's final scenes. And it reminded me that no matter what you do in your profession, in your life, you do form bonds with the people that you spend a lot of time with, more so than your own family on many occasions. And I saw how you comforted him, and it just made me think, firstly, how cool is it that they captured that moment? And secondly, what kind of bonds were you all able to create over the years working together on this show?
It was, I mean, we spent a lot of time together. We spent a lot, but interestingly, we were broken up into very small groups or just pairs. So I spent a lot of time with Nikolai Coster-Waldau, and I spent a lot of time with Daniel Portman. And so Daniel Portman and I spent many, many days, nights together, huddled around, you know, gas fires, in mud, in rain, finding real proper friendship. And the same with Nikolai and I. But, you know, there were so many really phenomenal actors, but phenomenal people on that show. And you develop, because you love what you're doing and because you love your character. I think everybody did love their character, and that's what really comes through in the show. But also people could feel intense bonds with their character. And you become united through that love. And you're also aware, I did not want Brienne to die. I really didn't. I was prepared for the worst, but I think it would have broken my heart if she had. And you know, Conleth, that he will feel that extreme pain. We all know they're just characters. We all know we're just really lucky to do a job as actors, but you can't help but give yourself over almost completely to the character in service of making it live, in service of this great story, in service of these books. As they say, as it says in the show, there's nothing as powerful as a good story. And to be in something that's loved by people is extraordinary. You're lucky to be in something that anyone watches,
Yeah.
something that people love, and you love it. I could feel it was palpable. I could feel Conleth's pain there, and she wanted to comfort him and show him that love, because it's an incredible thing that's changed all of our lives.
Yeah.
Coming to an end, and everybody's staring over the precipice at the same time. I feel extraordinarily lucky that Brienne lived, because it means that she can live on in my mind, but also what I've learnt from the character, of which I've learnt so much, I can take with me into other parts, in terms of how I view other parts, in terms of how other parts can be interpreted. Because I think that's very significant for women now, is that it isn't, unfortunately, always on the page. It isn't like there's a dearth of incredible scripts for women, with the involvement of women, caretaking women's stories. A lot of, I think many actors will tell you, a lot of work often has to be done with just what's on the page, of trying to transform it into something else, and in trying to communicate a relevant story about society and reflecting people's lives. It's, and it all exists. It's all out there. It's just paying attention to it. And so, people put a lot of work into their characters in trying to bring something of the now and bring something relevant and something hopefully of some significance.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, speaking of things that people love, this show obviously is a phenomenon, and which meant that a lot of people around the globe felt some ownership for it. And being honest, there was a mixed reaction about some of the episodes of the final season, and particularly the final episode. I loved it. You've mentioned that you loved it, but what did it feel like to hear that some people were not happy about it and wanted something different? And how do you balance that reaction out with how you felt about it yourself?
I knew that this story would never end in a way that would please everybody. And I knew that its ending was totally unconventional, and that would surprise people. And it might not necessarily be the ending they expected, or the ending that they wanted, or the ending that conventional narrative has suggested to us. Because, the conventional narrative is that our favourites get there in the end. The people we spent the most time with get there in the end. What I loved about it was that it was someone who was completely unambitious and was not in pursuit of power, and therefore is the least likely to be corrupted. And that I loved. That I loved. And I loved that it was the quiet boy who had traveled to different places and was not in service of his own ego. And that I was happy with. But it's also in another way, yes, you can't help but feel you want people to be happy. You want people to love it. But this was never a conventional story.
No.
And it was never going to have the happy ending that you all expected. So I like that it was subversive.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. As a final question, you've touched on this earlier in our discussion, but you've gotten to play Captain Phasma, and you are playing Titania on stage. Like, you've got some really amazing roles, perhaps maybe out of the exposure you've received from this show. So, I mean, you're obviously super thankful, but are you now ready to let Game of Thrones go, or do you think that you'll be talking about it forever?
I mean, I am in a very privileged position to be talking about it forever. I am unbelievably lucky to have been a part of such an incredible TV show that people have loved. And so if I have to talk about it forever, then that is not really a hardship, you know. I've got to play the most, and I have to mention him. I've been lucky enough to play opposite Nikolai Coster-Waldau, and the relationship between Jamie and Brienne has been truly extraordinary, because it has really evolved beyond what most male-female relationships have been presented as on television, because it's been born out of a kind of mutual dislike to a begrudging respect, and then changed into a sort of odd mercurial relationship where neither character really knew what was happening, and then evolves into something resembling love for a moment, and then dies. And I've learned so much from working with Nikolai, I unfortunately have to say. But I've loved playing that relationship, and I've loved exploring how unlikely it is, a kind of unlikely relationship between a man and a woman. The fact that George R.R. Martin created it so it was a reversal of Beauty and the Beast, with the woman being the beast and the man being the beauty. The fact that it has been about upending gender stereotypes and male-female relationships. And I've been so lucky to work with that actor, and I truly love playing that relationship, and hugely fortunate. You know, I love Captain Phasma in Star Wars conceptually. I love what she represents. Again, it's about an unconventional woman. It's about stepping outside of patriarchal constraints. And it's extraordinary how many people latched onto that and loved it and continue to love it, and particularly young kids, you know. And what I love is that it's little girls and it's little boys.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I love about it. And I think what is surprising about the character of Brienne of Tarth is that no one expected her to be beloved, particularly me. And I think it represents that society is ready for a change in their stories. And I really hope that continues. And what I've learnt from how unconventional that character is that I will take that outlook into every part I have and be unafraid.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Gwendolen, for your time today. We loved watching Brienne over the years. It's been great.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks so much.
Now, to all Game of Thrones fans, go to goldderby.com right now and make your predictions so you can compete against know-it-alls just like me. And don't forget, there's plenty of interviews with amazing contenders just like Gwendolen. So click subscribe right now. See you later.